The zipper stopped halfway up her spine. Liam's hands froze against the silk of Arya Bennett's wedding dress, his throat tightening around words he'd carried for 3 weeks like shattered glass. Through the mirror, their eyes met, hers wide with the desperate hope of a woman clinging to illusion, his dark with a truth that would destroy her mourning. Outside the bridal suite, 200 guests waited. The orchestra had already begun its prelude, but the groom's parking spot sat empty, and Liam knew it would stay that way. He drew a breath that tasted like ash and betrayal. "Ms. Bennett," he said quietly, "he's not coming. If you want to see how this story ends, stay with me until the final word. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels." Liam Carter had never imagined his life would include moments like this. Standing in a luxury hotel bridal suite at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, watching his boss examine herself in a floor-length mirror while wearing a dress that cost more than his annual salary. The gown was breathtaking, all flowing silk and delicate lace that caught the early light streaming through the windows. Arya Bennett looked like something out of a magazine, her dark hair swept up in an intricate style that had taken 2 hours to complete, her makeup flawless. But her hands shook as she reached back, trying and failing to grasp the zipper. "I can't quite reach it," she said, and there was something in her voice, a tremor she was working hard to suppress, that made Liam's chest tighten. "Could you—" He'd been her personal assistant for nearly 4 years. In that time, he'd handled everything from scheduling her international business trips to picking up her dry cleaning at midnight when she'd forgotten about an early morning board meeting. He'd seen her exhausted, frustrated, triumphant, and furious. He'd watched her build an empire from the technology company her father had left her, transforming it from a respectable mid-sized firm into one of the most innovative players in the industry. He knew how she took her coffee, which restaurants she preferred for client dinners, and exactly how to tell when she was on the verge of firing someone. But he'd never seen her like this, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the fact that she was about to marry a man who didn't deserve her. "Of course," Liam said quietly, crossing the room. His daughter Emma's face flashed through his mind as he reached for the zipper. She was 6 years old, currently at his sister's house a few blocks away, probably eating pancakes and watching cartoons without a care in the world. Emma didn't know that her father's boss was getting married today, didn't know that Liam had barely slept in 3 weeks, didn't know that the weight pressing down on his shoulders had nothing to do with work and everything to do with a choice he'd made, or failed to make. The zipper was cool under his fingers. He began pulling it upward, watching the fabric close over Arya's spine, and tried not to think about how many times he'd rehearsed this moment in his head. Tried not to think about the folder hidden in his car, stuffed with printed emails, bank records, and photographs that told a story Arya didn't know yet. Tried not to think about the 3 weeks he'd spent investigating Marcus Chen, the man waiting, or supposedly waiting, at the end of the aisle. "You're quiet this morning," Arya said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. Her voice was carefully controlled, the same tone she used in board meetings when she was testing someone. "Even for you." Liam was known for being quiet. It was part of what made him good at his job. He observed, he anticipated needs before they were voiced. He solved problems without drawing attention to himself. He'd learned those skills long before he'd started working for Arya, back when he was a 26-year-old single father trying to figure out how to raise a newborn daughter on his own after his girlfriend had walked out 3 weeks after Emma was born. "Just making sure everything's perfect," he said, continuing to work the zipper upward. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. "Marcus called last night," Arya said suddenly. "Late. He said he needed to handle some last-minute business before the wedding." She paused. He sounded strange. Liam's hand stilled for a fraction of a second before he forced himself to continue. "Strange how?" "Distant. Distracted." Arya's eyes stayed locked on his reflection. He kept saying everything would be fine, that today would be perfect, but he wouldn't tell me what the business was about. Another pause. "You know what's funny?" He used almost the exact same words you just did. "Everything's perfect." The zipper reached the top. Liam's fingers lingered there longer than necessary, and he watched Arya's expression in the mirror, the way her jaw was set, the way her shoulders held themselves just a little too rigidly. She looked beautiful. She also looked like a woman preparing for battle rather than a wedding. He should have stepped back. Should have murmured something appropriate about how she looked lovely and what time the car would be ready. Should have maintained the professional distance he'd kept for 4 years, the boundary that had kept him employed and safe and separate from the mess his life would become if he ever crossed it. Instead, he said, "Ms. Bennett, there's something you need to know." Her eyes sharpened in the mirror. "What?" "Marcus isn't handling last-minute business." Liam's throat felt tight, but the words came anyway, steady and quiet and irrevocable. "He's not coming to the wedding." The silence that followed was so complete that Liam could hear his own heartbeat. Outside the bridal suite, he could hear the distant sounds of the hotel coming to life. Footsteps in the hallway, the low murmur of voices, the faint music from the ballroom where the ceremony was supposed to begin in less than an hour. None of those sounds penetrated the space between him and Arya. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at his reflection with an expression that gave away nothing. "How do you know?" Her voice was ice. This was it. The moment Liam had been dreading for 3 weeks, ever since he'd accidentally stumbled across an email Marcus had left open on Arya's home computer when Liam had stopped by to drop off some documents. An email that had made no sense at first, something about timelines and asset transfers and getting out before anyone realized what was happening. An email that had sent Liam down a rabbit hole he'd never intended to explore, piecing together a picture that made him sick. 3 weeks ago, I saw an email, Liam said. He kept his voice level, professional, even though every instinct screamed at him to look away from her reflection, to give her privacy for whatever she was about to feel. "It was on your laptop at your house. I wasn't snooping, I was just putting the quarterly reports on your desk like you'd asked, and the screen was on. I glanced at it without thinking, and then I saw things that didn't make sense." "What things?" Arya's voice hadn't changed, still cold, still controlled. "References to accounts I didn't recognize, mentions of transfers that weren't part of your company's normal business, discussion of timelines that seemed tied to your wedding date." Liam's hands dropped to his sides. "I should have come to you immediately. I know that. But I wasn't sure and I didn't want to upset you with suspicions, so I started looking into it on my own. You investigated my fiancé." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "For 3 weeks." "Yes." "Without telling me." Liam's jaw tightened. "Yes." Arya turned then, finally breaking eye contact with the mirror to face him directly. The movement made the silk of her wedding dress rustle, a sound that seemed obscenely normal given what they were discussing. Her face was still perfectly composed, her makeup unmarred, but something in her eyes had shifted, something sharp and dangerous and fully alert. "Tell me what you found," she said. So Liam told her. He told her about the offshore accounts Marcus had opened in the Cayman Islands 6 months ago, shortly after he and Arya had gotten engaged. He told her about the shell company Marcus had created, designed to funnel money away from Arya's business once they were married and he had legal access to her assets. He told her about the business partners Marcus had been meeting with, competitors of Arya's company, people who would benefit enormously from inside information about her upcoming product launches and strategic plans. He told her about the communications he'd found between Marcus and his lawyer, discussing prenuptial agreement loopholes and community property laws. About the apartment Marcus had leased under a false name, the one with a lease that started next week. About the woman Marcus had been seeing for the past 2 months, a junior associate at one of those competitor firms. Liam kept his voice steady throughout the entire recitation, laying out facts like he was presenting a business proposal rather than destroying his boss's wedding day. He'd practiced this speech 100 times in his head, trying to find the right words, the right tone, the right way to deliver information that would shatter everything Arya thought she knew about her future. When he finished, the silence returned. Arya stood perfectly still in her wedding dress, backlit by the morning sun, and Liam couldn't read her expression at all. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked finally. It was the question Liam had been asking himself every day for 3 weeks. Why had he waited? Why had he kept digging on his own instead of bringing his concerns to Arya immediately? Why had he let her continue planning this wedding, finalizing arrangements, sending invitations, while he sat on information that would have stopped everything? "I was afraid," he said simply. "Of what?" "Of being wrong." The admission tasted bitter. "Of ruining your happiness based on suspicions, Of overstepping my role so badly that you'd fire me and I'd lose the best job I've ever had. He paused. Of destroying something important to you because I misunderstood what I was seeing. Arya's eyes narrowed slightly. You have a daughter. The subject change caught Liam off guard. Yes. Emma, she's 6. And you raise her alone. Yes. Which means you need this job. Need the salary, the health insurance, the stability. Liam's chest tightened. Yes. So when you say you were afraid of overstepping, what you really mean is you were afraid of risking your livelihood. Arya's voice remained perfectly even. Afraid of standing up for what was right because it might cost you something. The words hit like a physical blow, and Liam felt his face heat. Because she was right, that fear had been part of it, woven through every sleepless night, and every moment he'd hesitated to bring her the truth. He told himself he was being thorough, that he was making sure of his facts. But underneath it all had been the cold calculation of a single father who couldn't afford to be unemployed. Yes, he said quietly. That was part of it. And the other part? Arya took a step closer. What else were you afraid of, Liam? He should have deflected. Should have kept the conversation professional, stuck to the facts about Marcus's betrayal, maintained the careful distance that had defined their working relationship for 4 years. But something in Arya's eyes, something that suggested she already knew the answer, that she was testing him rather than asking, made him tell the truth. I was afraid of how much I didn't want you to marry him, Liam said. Not because of what he was planning, because of... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Because of what? Arya's voice had dropped lower, but she didn't look away. Because I've spent 4 years watching you build something extraordinary, watching you fight for what you believe in, watching you refuse to compromise who you are for anyone. Liam's hands clenched at his sides. And Marcus never saw any of that. He saw your money, your connections, your company, but he never saw you. And He swallowed hard. I didn't want to be the one to tell you that because I didn't trust my own motives. Didn't trust whether I was genuinely trying to protect you or whether I was just... He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't put into words the complicated tangle of feelings he'd been shoving down for years. The way his chest tightened when Arya smiled at something funny during a long car ride. The way he found himself watching her during meetings when he should have been taking notes. The way Emma had asked him once why he looked sad whenever Ms. Bennet talked about her wedding plans. Just what? Arya pressed. Acting on something I had no right to feel, Liam said. The silence stretched between them again, heavy with implications Liam couldn't take back. He'd crossed the line now, blown past every professional boundary that had kept him safe. He waited for Arya to tell him he was fired, that he'd misread everything, that he'd let his personal feelings contaminate his professional judgment in the worst possible way. Instead, she laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, completely devoid of humor. Do you know what's funny? She said. I already knew. Liam stared at her. What? About Marcus. About what he was planning. Arya crossed to the window, her wedding dress trailing behind her. Not all of it. You clearly did more thorough research than I did. But I knew enough. I've known for about 2 weeks. The floor seemed to shift under Liam's feet. You've known for 2 weeks that your fiancé was planning to betray you and you didn't call off the wedding? No. Arya's back was to him now, her voice drifting over her shoulder. I didn't call it off because I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to watch him stand up there at the altar and make promises he had no intention of keeping. I wanted to let him think he'd won, right up until the moment I destroyed him. There was something cold in her voice, something Liam had heard before during particularly brutal business negotiations, but never directed at someone she supposedly loved. He tried to reconcile this version of Arya, calculating, furious, planning revenge, with the woman who'd looked at him in the mirror 5 minutes ago with shaking hands and a trembling voice. You were going to let the ceremony happen, he said slowly. Let him marry you, and then expose everything in front of everyone who matters in this industry. Arya turned back to face him, and her smile was sharp enough to cut. His business partners, his clients, his competitors, all gathered in one room, all watching him be revealed as the fraud he is. I've spent 2 weeks building a case, gathering evidence, coordinating with lawyers and the SEC. Today wasn't supposed to be my wedding day, Liam, It was supposed to be Marcus's public execution. Liam felt something cold settle in his stomach. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know if I could trust you. Arya's eyes were hard. You're my assistant. You have access to everything in my life. For all I knew, you were part of Marcus's plan, or you were loyal to him somehow. Or you'd go running to him the moment I showed my hand. She paused. So I kept my investigation separate from everything you touched. I watched you. I waited to see what you'd do. And when you realized I'd found out too, Liam asked, I watched you struggle with it. Arya's voice softened slightly. I saw you pulling away, getting quieter than usual. I saw you looking at me during meetings like you wanted to say something but couldn't. I saw you avoiding Marcus when he came to the office. Another pause. I wondered if you'd tell me, if you'd risk everything to give me information I already had, if you'd choose honesty over safety. And I didn't, Liam said quietly. Not until this morning. Not until it was almost too late to matter. No, Arya agreed. You didn't. She crossed back toward him, her wedding dress whispering across the carpet. But you also didn't run to Marcus. You didn't tell him you'd found out. You didn't try to warn him or cover for him or position yourself to benefit from his plan. She stopped directly in front of Liam, close enough that he could see the flecks of amber in her dark eyes. You sat with the information alone. You carried the weight of it. And when you finally spoke up, you told me the truth, even though you thought it might destroy your career and hurt someone you... Her voice trailed off deliberately. Someone you cared about. Liam's throat was dry. Ms. Bennett, he's not coming, Arya said, echoing his earlier words. You were right about that part. I called him an hour ago and told him not to bother showing up. Told him I knew everything and that if he set foot in this hotel, security would escort him out and I'd press charges immediately. Her smile turned sharp again. So my carefully planned public execution is off the table, but you know what? I think I prefer it this way. Quick, clean, private. He doesn't get the spectacle he was probably hoping for. What do you mean, spectacle he was hoping for? Oh, come on. Arya's laugh was harsh. You think Marcus didn't know I'd eventually figure out what he was doing? He's not subtle, and I'm not stupid. He was probably counting on a big dramatic scene, me crying, making accusations, him playing the wounded party who was only trying to help my company. It would have been great material for the lawsuit he was planning to file, claiming I was unstable and he needed to protect his interests. She shook her head. No, this is better. He gets nothing. No wedding, no access to my assets, no public platform to spin his narrative. Just a quiet ending and my lawyers waiting to bury him. Liam tried to process what he was hearing. The Arya he thought he knew, the woman who'd built her company through brilliant strategy and calculated risks, had been playing a long game he'd never suspected. She'd been hurt by Marcus's betrayal. He could see that now in the tight corners of her mouth and the way her hands gripped her dress. But she'd channeled that hurt into something cold and surgical rather than letting it break her. So what happens now? He asked. Now? Arya glanced toward the window, where the morning sun continued its indifferent climb across the sky. Now I have to go downstairs and tell 200 guests that there's no wedding. I have to stand up there in this ridiculous dress and admit that I made a mistake trusting someone. I have to let everyone who came here to watch me promise forever see me walk away with nothing. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, the first real break in her composure. And then I have to figure out how to face Monday morning without feeling like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Liam said. Marcus is a con artist. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled me into thinking he loved me. Arya's voice was quiet now, all the steel drained out of it. That's what hurts. Not the money. I can protect my assets. Not the company. I've built safeguards that would have kicked in eventually, but the fact that I let him, that I believed... She stopped, pressing her lips together hard. Without thinking, Liam reached out and took her hand. It was a gesture that went miles beyond anything appropriate for an assistant, but he couldn't stop himself. Her fingers were cold despite the warmth of the room. You believed someone when they told you they loved you, he said quietly. That doesn't make you an idiot. It makes you human. Arya looked down at their joined hands, and for a long moment she didn't move. Then she squeezed his fingers gently. You should take Emma somewhere fun today, she said. The zoo, maybe. Or that aquarium she likes. You shouldn't have to spend your Saturday dealing with my mess. Emma's at my sister's house, Liam said. And this isn't your mess, it's Marcus's. You were just trying to build a life with someone you trusted. Until I couldn't trust him anymore. Arya's eyes met his again, and there was something raw in them now, something that made Liam's chest ache. When did you know? When did you start suspecting that your loyalty to me was about more than just work? The question caught Liam completely off guard, and he felt his face flush. Don't lie to me, Arya said softly. Not now. Not after everything. When did you know? Liam could have deflected again, could have found some safe, professional answer that would have restored the boundaries between them. But they'd already blown past those boundaries, and something in Arya's expression, vulnerable and fierce and waiting, made him choose honesty. About a year ago, he said, there was a board meeting where Whitmore tried to force you to sell off the research division. You stood up there and fought him for 2 hours straight, refused to back down even when half the board was against you. And afterward, when everyone left, you sat in that conference room by yourself and didn't cry. You just sat there thinking about your next move. Liam's voice roughened. I brought you coffee, and you looked up at me and smiled, and I realized I'd do anything to see you smile like that every day. Not as your assistant, as someone who... He stopped, the words too big for his throat. As someone who what? Arya pressed. As someone who gets to stand beside you instead of behind you, Liam finished quietly. Arya's breath caught, and for a moment she just stared at him. Then she said, Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you were engaged. Because I work for you. Because I'm a single father who barely scraped through community college while raising a baby, and you're Arya Bennett, who built an empire before you turned 30. Because... Stop. Arya's free hand came up to press against his chest, right over his heart. Stop listing all the reasons why you're not good enough. You spent 3 weeks investigating my fiancé to protect me, even though you were terrified it would cost you everything. You've spent 4 years making my life easier without ever asking for recognition. You're raising a daughter who, from everything I've seen, is smart and kind and loved. Her voice dropped lower. Don't you dare tell me you're not good enough. Liam felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept carefully contained for so long that he'd almost forgotten it was there. Want. Hope. The terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, the distance between where he stood and where Arya stood wasn't as impossible as he'd always believed. Miss Bennett, he started. Arya, she corrected. If we're being honest with each other, you should probably use my actual name. Arya, Liam said, and the sound of it in his mouth felt dangerous and right all at once. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know if I'm reading this right, or if I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Join the club, Arya said with a faint smile. I'm standing here in a wedding dress with no groom, about to walk downstairs and face everyone I know. I don't know what happens next either, but I know. She paused, her thumb rubbing small circles against his chest. I know I'm tired of pretending, tired of choosing what looks right over what feels right, tired of being the perfect CEO who never makes mistakes and never lets anyone see her sweat. You're allowed to make mistakes, Liam said. So are you. Arya's eyes held his. You were afraid to tell me about Marcus because you thought it would cost you your job. Well, it might have. But you know what else it would have cost if you hadn't told me? It would have cost you the chance to be honest about what you really wanted. It would have cost you years of watching me be with someone else while you stood quietly in the background. It would have cost you... She stopped abruptly, her eyes widening. Liam followed her gaze to the door of the bridal suite, where the handle was turning. They barely had time to step apart before the door swung open and Marcus Chen walked in. He looked exactly like what he was. A handsome, well-dressed fraud in an expensive suit, his smile perfectly calibrated and his presence filling the room like poisoned gas. He stopped when he saw Liam standing there, his eyebrows rising slightly. Liam, he said pleasantly, I didn't expect to see you here. Shouldn't you be downstairs coordinating with the caterers or something? You're not supposed to be here, Arya said coldly. I told you not to come. Marcus's smile didn't waver. I know what you told me, darling, but I thought we should talk before you do something you'll regret. You know, clear up these misunderstandings you seem to have about my intentions. Misunderstandings. Arya's voice could have frozen water. Is that what you're calling it? A misunderstanding? Look, I know you've been stressed lately. Marcus moved further into the room, and Liam's muscles tensed instinctively. Planning a wedding is hard. Running a company is harder, and I think maybe you've let the pressure get to you. You're seeing conspiracies where there's just normal business dealings. You're questioning motives that are completely innocent, and I think if we just sit down and talk this through calmly. I have bank records, Arya cut him off. I have emails. I have documentation of every shell company you created, every offshore account you opened, every meeting you took with my competitors. I have photographs of you with Amanda Reeves, your little girlfriend from Nexus Systems. I have testimony from 3 different lawyers who are willing to confirm that you consulted them about asset protection strategies specifically designed to strip wealth from a spouse during a divorce. Her voice rose with each sentence, all the careful control dissolving into fury. So don't stand there and tell me I'm imagining things. Don't try to gaslight me into thinking I'm crazy. And don't you dare call me darling. Marcus's smile finally cracked, his expression shifting into something harder. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have every idea. Arya took a step toward him. I've spent 2 weeks building a case against you. I know exactly what you were planning to do. Marry me, get access to my assets, funnel money out of my company and into your accounts, feed inside information to my competitors, and then file for divorce once you'd bled me dry enough that the settlement would set you up for life. Did I miss anything? You missed the part where you're making a huge mistake, Marcus said, and now his voice had an edge Liam had never heard before. You think you can just walk away from this? You think there won't be consequences? Every business partner you have, every investor, every client, they're all downstairs right now waiting to see you get married. What do you think happens to your reputation when you call this off? When you admit you couldn't even maintain a relationship long enough to make it down the aisle? I'm not the one who couldn't maintain a relationship, Arya said icily. You're the one who was sleeping with someone else while planning to rob me blind. Prove it. Marcus's smile returned, sharper this time. Go ahead. Take me to court. Drag this out in public. Let everyone see you as the paranoid CEO who accused her innocent fiancé of crimes he didn't commit. Let's see how that plays with your board of directors. You think I won't? Arya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You think I'll back down because you're threatening my reputation? I think you'll back down because you're smart enough to know when you're outmatched. Marcus's eyes flicked to Liam and his expression turned knowing. Or is this not really about the business at all? Is this about him? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Liam felt his stomach drop as Marcus's gaze traveled between him and Arya, reading something in their body language that they'd tried to keep hidden. This has nothing to do with Liam, Arya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Doesn't it? Marcus's smile widened. Come on, Arya. I'm not blind. I've seen the way he looks at you, the way you light up when he walks into a room. The way you two have these little private jokes and understandings that exclude everyone else. He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Did you really think I didn't notice? Did you think I cared? I didn't. You could have been sleeping with him for all I cared, as long as you married me today and gave me what I needed. Get out, Arya said, her voice shaking now. Get out of this room before I call security and have you thrown out of this hotel. I'll go, Marcus said easily. But answer me one question first. Did he tell you what he found out, or did you have to figure it out on your own? Arya's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Your loyal assistant here, Marcus nodded toward Liam. He's known about my plans for weeks. I could see it in the way he started avoiding me, the way he'd watch me during meetings like he was waiting for me to slip up. And yet he didn't tell you, did he? He sat on that information while you kept planning our wedding, kept thinking everything was fine. Makes you wonder why he waited so long. Makes you wonder what he was really protecting, you or himself. Liam felt like he'd been punched. Because Marcus was right. He had waited. He had hesitated. And he couldn't fully defend his motives even to himself. He'd told Arya he was afraid, but that fear had been tangled up with so many other things that he couldn't separate them anymore. He told me this morning, Arya said quietly, and that's more than you ever did.
He told you this morning because he finally realized I wasn't coming, Marcus shot back. He told you because it was safe to tell you, because the decision was already made, and he could look like a hero without taking any real risk. But for 3 weeks, he kept his mouth shut and let you keep planning a wedding he knew would never happen. So before you start acting like he's your knight in shining armor, maybe ask yourself why he waited until it didn't matter anymore. The words hit their target. Liam could see it in the way Arya's expression flickered with doubt. And the worst part was that he couldn't entirely deny what Marcus was saying. He had waited. He had let fear and self-preservation guide his choices. He had prioritized his own safety over Arya's right to know the truth. "Get out," Arya said again, and this time her voice was flat and final. "Get out now, or I will have you arrested for trespassing." Marcus held her gaze for another moment, then shrugged. "Fine, I'll go. But you should know, I didn't need to be here for the wedding anyway. The real work is already done. By Monday morning, you're going to find out just how much damage I've already caused to your company, and there's nothing you or your faithful assistant can do to stop it." He turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him with a soft finality that seemed to echo through the room. Arya stood frozen in her wedding dress, staring at the closed door. Liam wanted to reach for her, wanted to say something that would erase the doubt Marcus had planted, but he didn't know what words could possibly bridge the gap that had suddenly opened between them. "Is it true?" Arya asked without turning around. "Did you wait because it was safe?" "No," Liam said immediately. Then more honestly, "Not entirely. I waited because I was afraid. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of losing my job. Afraid of hurting you. But I also waited because I was trying to make sure I had all the facts, trying to build a case solid enough that you couldn't dismiss it. I didn't want to bring you suspicions. I wanted to bring you proof." "For 3 weeks, Arya said. "For 3 weeks, Liam agreed. "And I know that was too long. I know I should have come to you sooner, but I didn't wait because I didn't care, Arya. I waited because I cared too much. Because I needed to be absolutely certain before I destroyed something that seemed to make you happy." Arya finally turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears that she was clearly fighting not to let fall. "What did he mean when he said the damage is already done?" "I don't know," Liam admitted, "but we should call your head of security and your lawyers. If Marcus has already made moves against the company—" "He has," Arya said dully. "Of course he has. That's what I would have done if I were running a con this big. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You don't rely entirely on the wedding going through. You set up fail-safes and backup plans and ways to profit, even if the mark catches on." She pressed her hands to her face. "God, I'm so stupid." "You're not stupid," Liam said. "You're human, and you're dealing with someone who made lying to you his full-time job for months. I thought I had it under control." Arya's voice was muffled behind her hands. "I thought I was playing him, that I was the one holding all the cards. And all this time, he was 3 steps ahead. He wanted me to find out. He wanted me to call off the wedding. Because that was never his endgame. The endgame was always about the company." Liam crossed to her slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. When she didn't, he gently pulled her hands down from her face. Her makeup was still perfect, but her eyes held a devastation that had nothing to do with canceled weddings and everything to do with trust that had been shattered. "Then we fight back," he said quietly. "We figure out what he's done, and we fix it. And we make sure he never gets the chance to do this to anyone else." "We?" Arya's voice was barely a whisper. "We," Liam confirmed. "If you'll have me. Not as your assistant, as your partner. In whatever comes next." Arya's laugh was watery. "You're asking me to trust you? After you just admitted you kept secrets for 3 weeks?" "No," Liam said. "I'm asking you to let me earn your trust. To let me prove that when it mattered most, I chose honesty over safety. To let me show you that everything I've done, including the mistakes, came from a place of trying to protect you." He paused. "And I'm asking you to forgive me for not being perfect, for being scared and flawed and human. Because I am all those things. But I'm also someone who will stand beside you for whatever comes next, no matter what it costs me." Arya searched his face for a long moment. Then she said, "I need to go downstairs. I need to tell all those people that there's no wedding. I need to face the music. Okay, Liam said. I'll be right there with you. No, Arya shook her head. I need to do this alone. I need to stand up there by myself and admit that I made a mistake, that I trusted the wrong person. I need to take responsibility for that. Liam wanted to argue, wanted to insist on standing beside her, but he understood what she was saying. This was her moment, not theirs, not yet. She needed to reclaim her narrative on her own terms, needed to face her guests and her board and her future without anyone else's support to lean on. Okay, he said again. But afterward, after you've done what you need to do, I'll be waiting.
And we'll figure out what Marcus meant about the damage being done, and we'll stop it. Arya nodded slowly. Then, before Liam could react, she leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek.
Thank you, she whispered.
For telling me, even if it was 3 weeks late, even if it wasn't perfect. Thank you for choosing honesty in the end. She pulled back and walked toward the door, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a ghost of the future she'd thought she was building. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at him one more time. Liam? Yes? When this is over, when I've dealt with Marcus and cleaned up whatever mess he's made, I want to have a conversation, a real one, about what happens next, about us. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. Okay. Okay, Arya echoed. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, disappearing from view. Liam stood alone in the bridal suite, surrounded by abandoned makeup brushes and empty champagne flutes, and the faint scent of Arya's perfume. Through the windows, he could see the hotel grounds spreading out below. Manicured lawns, elaborate floral arrangements, a ceremony space that would never be used for its intended purpose. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his sister. Emma wants to know if you're coming to get her for lunch. She says she misses you. Liam looked at the message, thought about his daughter waiting for him, thought about the life he'd built carefully and cautiously over 6 years of single fatherhood. A life where he didn't take risks, didn't reach for things that seemed impossible, didn't let himself want anything beyond stability and safety for Emma. And then he thought about Arya walking downstairs in her wedding dress to tell 200 people that her future had just imploded. Thought about Marcus's parting threat about damage already done to the company. Thought about the way Arya had looked at him when she'd asked why he'd waited to tell her the truth. Not with anger, but with a complicated mixture of hurt and understanding and something that might have been hope. He typed back a response to his sister. Tell Emma I'll be there in a few hours. Something came up at work that I need to handle first. I love her. Then he pocketed his phone and headed for the door. Whatever Arya was about to face downstairs, whatever chaos was waiting in the ballroom full of confused guests, whatever moves Marcus had already made against the company, Liam would be there to help deal with the fallout. Not because it was his job, not because he was obligated to, because when Arya had asked him to earn her trust, what she'd really been asking was whether he would choose her over safety one more time, whether he would risk the comfortable distance he'd maintained for 4 years and step into uncertainty beside her. And the answer, Liam realized as he walked down the hallway toward the sound of murmuring voices and growing confusion, was yes. The answer had always been yes. He just hoped it wasn't too late to matter. The ballroom had been designed to look like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, casting prismatic light across white silk draped from every surface. Hundreds of white roses formed elaborate centerpieces on each table, their perfume so thick in the air that Liam could taste it on his tongue. A string quartet sat in the corner, their instruments silent now as they waited for a ceremony that would never begin. 200 guests filled the chairs arranged in neat rows facing an altar where Marcus should have been standing. They were murmuring to each other now, their voices creating a low buzz of confusion and speculation. Liam could see board members from Arya's company clustered together near the front, their expressions ranging from concern to irritation. He spotted investors, business partners, society figures who'd probably come more for the networking opportunities than any genuine affection for the bride or groom. He stayed near the back wall, partially hidden behind a column, and watched as Arya appeared at the entrance to the ballroom. She stood there for a moment, perfectly still in her wedding dress, her shoulders back and her chin raised. From this distance, she looked composed, untouchable.
But Liam had seen her face up close just minutes ago, had seen the cracks in her armor, and he knew what that rigid posture was costing her. The murmuring died down as people noticed her standing there. Someone near the front said something Liam couldn't hear, and then a ripple of awareness spread through the crowd. Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The string quartet lowered their instruments completely. Arya walked down the center aisle alone. There was no music, no one to give her away, no groom waiting at the other end, just Arya in her wedding dress, walking toward an altar that suddenly seemed obscene in its optimistic decoration, each step deliberate and measured. Liam's chest ached watching her. He wanted to go to her, wanted to stand beside her and share the weight of whatever she was about to say, but he'd promised to let her do this alone. She reached the front and turned to face the crowd. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and from where Liam stood, he couldn't see if they were shaking. "Thank you all for coming," Arya said. Her voice carried clearly through the ballroom, amplified by whatever sound system had been set up for the ceremony. "I know you're confused about why there's no groom standing up here with me. I know you've been waiting for this to start, and you're probably wondering what's causing the delay." She paused, and in that pause, Liam could hear the collective held breath of 200 people. "There isn't going to be a wedding," Arya continued. Her voice didn't waver. "Marcus and I are not getting married today. We're not getting married ever, and I owe you all an explanation for why I've brought you here under false pretenses." The murmuring started up again immediately, louder this time. Liam saw shock register on face after face, saw people leaning toward each other to exchange rapid whispers. One of the board members, Whitmore, the one who'd tried to force Arya to sell the research division, stood up as if to speak, but Arya raised a hand and he sat back down. "About 2 weeks ago," Arya said, "I discovered that Marcus had been systematically planning to defraud me and my company. He created shell corporations designed to funnel assets away from Bennett Technologies once we were married. He opened offshore accounts to hide money he intended to steal. He met with my competitors to discuss selling them proprietary information. He consulted with lawyers about the best way to strip wealth from a spouse during divorce proceedings." The ballroom erupted. People were standing now, voices rising in questions and exclamations. Liam saw several board members conferring urgently with each other, their faces dark with concern. He saw investors reaching for their phones. He saw society figures who'd probably come hoping for entertainment getting more drama than they'd bargained for. "I have evidence," Arya said, raising her voice to cut through the noise. "I have documentation. I have testimony. And I will be pursuing legal action against Marcus Chen for attempted fraud, corporate espionage, and breach of fiduciary duty. My lawyers will be making a full statement by end of business Monday." "Where is he?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Where's Chen?" "Not here," Arya said simply. "I informed him this morning that if he showed his face at this hotel, he would be arrested. He chose not to test that boundary." Whitmore was on his feet again. "Ms. Bennett, this is highly irregular. If you had concerns about Mr. Chen's business dealings, the appropriate venue would have been a private conversation with the board, not a public spectacle." "This isn't a spectacle," Arya cut him off, and for the first time real anger flashed in her voice. "This is me being transparent with everyone who has a stake in my company and my reputation. This is me getting ahead of whatever narrative Marcus plans to spin. This is me taking control of a situation that could have destroyed everything I've built." "But surely there was a better way." Whitmore started. "There was no better way," Arya said flatly. "Marcus spent months planning to rob me. He used our relationship as cover for corporate espionage. He courted me, proposed to me, made me believe he loved me, all while planning to destroy the company my father left me." Her voice cracked slightly on the last words, and Liam saw her hands tighten their grip on each other. "So no, Whitmore, there was no better way to handle this. There was only honesty. And I'm choosing to be honest with all of you now, before rumors start circulating, before anyone hears a twisted version of events from Marcus's lawyers." The ballroom had gone quiet again. Liam could see the calculation happening on people's faces. Investors weighing risk exposure, board members considering political implications, business partners reassessing their relationships with Bennett Technologies. This was the moment Arya had been dreading, he realized. Not the canceled wedding itself, but this aftermath.
The moment when everyone who mattered in her professional life had to decide whether her judgment could still be trusted.
I made a mistake, Arya said into the silence. I trusted someone I shouldn't have trusted. I let personal feelings compromise my usual caution. I apologize to everyone who came here expecting a wedding, especially those of you who traveled long distances. The hotel staff will assist with any accommodations you need. The reception dinner will still be served if anyone would like to stay, though I understand if you'd prefer to leave. She started to step down from the altar, clearly intending to end the conversation there, but a voice from the middle of the crowd stopped her. Did you know? It was a woman's voice, sharp and carrying. Liam craned his neck and saw Victoria Chen, Marcus's mother, standing with her arms crossed. Did you know before today that my son was planning whatever you're accusing him of? Arya turned back slowly. Yes, she said. I found out about 2 weeks ago. And you let all this proceed anyway? Victoria's voice rose. You let us send gifts, make arrangements, book travel. You let all of us invest time and money and energy into this wedding when you knew it wasn't going to happen? I was gathering evidence, Arya said. Her voice had gone cold again. I was building a case solid enough that your son couldn't talk his way out of it. And yes, that meant maintaining the appearance that everything was fine until I was ready to act. So you lied to us, Victoria said. You're standing up there accusing Marcus of dishonesty, but you spent 2 weeks lying to everyone in this room. The accusation hit its mark. Liam could see it in the way some of the guests nodded, in the way Whitmore's expression shifted toward vindication. Victoria had found the weak point in Arya's narrative, the fact that she'd been playing her own long game, keeping secrets, and maintaining deceptions even as she positioned herself as the victim. You're right, Arya said, and the admission seemed to surprise everyone, including Victoria. I lied. I let you all continue preparing for a wedding I knew wouldn't happen. I smiled and accepted congratulations and made final arrangements while knowing the whole thing was going to fall apart. And I did it because I was angry, and I wanted to control the narrative, and I wanted to make sure Marcus couldn't slip away before I exposed what he'd done. She paused. I'm not proud of that. But I'm also not going to apologize for protecting myself and my company the only way I knew how. By humiliating everyone here? Victoria's face was flushed now. By making fools of us? No, Arya said sharply. Your son humiliated you. Your son made fools of everyone by using this wedding as cover for fraud. I'm just the one who stopped pretending everything was fine long enough to tell you all the truth. Victoria looked like she wanted to say more, but a man beside her, Marcus's father, Liam assumed, put a hand on her arm and pulled her back down into her seat. The gesture was firm enough to suggest he wasn't interested in extending the argument. Liam saw Arya's shoulders dip slightly, as if the confrontation had drained something from her. But she straightened again almost immediately, that rigid control snapping back into place. If anyone has questions about the legal proceedings, Arya said, my lawyers will be available starting Monday. If anyone has concerns about their business relationship with Bennett Technologies, I'll be in my office Tuesday morning. We can schedule individual conversations. She scanned the crowd. And if anyone wants to cut ties entirely because you can't trust my judgment anymore, I understand. I'll work with you to make that transition as smooth as possible. She stepped down from the altar then, not waiting for a response. The crowd parted as she walked back down the center aisle, and Liam watched dozens of eyes track her movement. Some looked sympathetic, some looked speculative, some looked coldly analytical, already calculating how this scandal would affect their own interests. Arya didn't look at any of them. She kept her eyes straight ahead and walked out of the ballroom with the same measured pace she'd used entering it. The only difference was that now her wedding dress seemed less like a promise and more like a costume she couldn't wait to take off. Liam waited until she disappeared through the doorway, then slipped out through a side exit. He found her in a small hallway behind the ballroom, leaning against the wall with her eyes closed. Her chest was rising and falling too quickly, and her hands were pressed flat against the silk of her dress, as if to hold herself together through physical pressure alone. You did good, Liam said quietly. Arya's eyes snapped open. For a second she looked startled to see him there, then something in her expression softened. I just threw my entire reputation into a fire and hoped I'd survive the burn. You told the truth, Liam said. That takes more courage than most people have. Or more stupidity. Arya pushed off from the wall. Did you see Whitmore's face? He's probably already calling an emergency board meeting to discuss removing me as CEO. He can try, Liam said. You still control 52% of the voting shares. He'd need to convince you to vote yourself out. Arya laughed shakily. You always know the exact numbers. That's what I love about... She stopped abruptly, the word hanging between them unfinished. Liam felt his pulse jump, but forced himself to stay focused. What did Marcus mean about damage already being done? We need to figure that out before Monday morning. I know. Arya started walking down the hallway, and Liam fell into step beside her. I've been thinking about that. He wouldn't have said it unless he'd already executed at least part of whatever backup plan he had. And the fact that he specifically mentioned Monday morning suggests it's something that will become visible when the markets open. Stock manipulation? Liam suggested. Possibly. Or he's arranged for one of our major contracts to fall through. Or he's leaked proprietary information that will damage our competitive position. Arya's hand went to her temple, rubbing at what was probably the beginning of a headache. There are too many variables. He had months to set this up, and I only had 2 weeks to investigate him. I don't know what I missed. They reached the elevator bank, and Arya jabbed the button harder than necessary. I need to get out of this dress. I need to get to my office. I need to start making calls and reviewing every file Marcus had access to over the past 6 months. You need to breathe, Liam interrupted. You just faced down 200 people and admitted you made a mistake in front of everyone who matters in your industry. You're allowed to take 5 minutes before you charge into crisis management mode. The elevator doors opened and Arya stepped inside. Liam followed, hitting the button for the parking garage. As the doors closed, shutting them into the small space, Arya's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. I'm terrified, she said quietly. I have no idea what Marcus has done. I have no idea how bad the damage is going to be. And I have no idea if I'm going to be able to fix it before it destroys everything I've spent 10 years building. You won't be fixing it alone, Liam reminded her. Arya looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. You should go home. You should go pick up Emma from your sister's house and take her to the zoo or the aquarium like you planned. You shouldn't be standing in an elevator with me trying to save my company on what should be your day off. Emma will understand if I'm late, Liam said. This is more important. Is it? Arya's voice was soft. She's 6 years old, Liam. She needs her father. And you've already spent 3 weeks carrying secrets about my life that weren't yours to carry. You've already sacrificed enough. The elevator reached the parking garage and the doors slid open. Liam stepped out but turned back to face Arya before she could follow. When Emma was born, he said, her mother looked at her exactly once and then told me she couldn't do it. Couldn't be a mother. Couldn't handle the responsibility. And she walked out 3 weeks later without looking back. Arya went still. Liam had never told her this story before, had never told anyone at work more than the bare minimum about his personal life. For 6 years, Liam continued, I've built my entire life around making sure Emma never feels abandoned again, making sure she knows she has at least one parent who will always choose her, always show up, always be there. And I'm good at it now, the balancing act of being a single father who works full-time. But it took me years to get good at it. Years of trial and error and mistakes and nights where I had no idea if I was doing any of it right. Liam, Arya started. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me, Liam said. I'm telling you because I know what it looks like when someone walks away from something hard. I know what it sounds like when someone decides that the cost of staying is too high. And I'm telling you that I'm not walking away from this. Not from helping you figure out what Marcus did. Not from standing beside you while you deal with the fallout. Not from... He stopped, searching for the right words. Not from whatever this is between us that we haven't named yet. Arya stepped out of the elevator, moving close enough that he could see the faint tracks where tears had threatened to fall earlier but hadn't quite made it. What if I can't give you what you want? She asked. What if I'm too damaged from this? Too focused on my company? Too afraid to trust anyone again? Then we figure it out, Liam said simply. Together. But you don't get to make that decision for me. You don't get to push me away because you think you're protecting me or protecting Emma. I'm an adult. I get to choose where I invest my time and my loyalty and my... He stopped again. The next word too big and too soon. You're what? Arya pressed, echoing the same question she'd asked him earlier in the bridal suite. Liam held her gaze. My heart.
he said quietly. I get to choose where I invest my heart, and I'm choosing to invest it here, with you, even if it's messy and complicated and terrifying. Arya's breath caught. Then she closed the distance between them and kissed him. It wasn't the kind of kiss Liam had imagined during the past year of watching her from a careful distance. It wasn't soft or tentative or careful. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like tears she hadn't let fall, and fury she hadn't let loose, and hope she hadn't let herself feel. Her hands came up to grip his shoulders, and Liam's arms went around her waist automatically, pulling her closer, even though the enormous wedding dress made the gesture awkward. When they finally broke apart, Arya was breathing hard. I can't think straight when you say things like that, she said. Good, Liam said. You think too much anyway. That startled a real laugh out of her, rough and surprised. You did not just tell your boss she thinks too much. You're not my boss right now, Liam said. Right now you're just Arya, and I'm just Liam, and we're just two people standing in a parking garage trying to figure out what comes next. What comes next is I need to change out of this dress before I lose my mind, Arya said. And then we need to get to my office and start digging through files to figure out what kind of bomb Marcus left us. Agreed. Liam stepped back, giving her space. Do you have other clothes here? In my car. Arya gestured toward a sleek black sedan parked nearby. I keep a go bag in the trunk for emergencies. It's mostly business clothes, but it's better than walking around in a wedding dress all day. They walked to her car and Arya popped the trunk to retrieve a leather weekender bag. I'm going to change in the hotel bathroom, she said. Give me 5 minutes. Take 10, Liam said. I'll call your head of security and have him meet us at the office. Arya nodded and headed back toward the elevator with her bag. Liam pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found David Morrison, the ex-military security chief Arya had hired 2 years ago after a competitor tried to bribe one of her engineers for trade secrets. Morrison answered on the second ring. I heard about the wedding. Is Miss Bennett okay? Define okay, Liam said. She's standing, she's coherent, and she just told 200 people that her fiancé tried to rob her. But we have a problem. Marcus made some kind of threat about damage already being done to the company, and we need to figure out what he meant before the markets open Monday morning. I'll meet you at headquarters in 20 minutes, Morrison said immediately. I'll bring my team. We'll start running diagnostics on all systems, checking for breaches or unauthorized access. Good. Also, Liam hesitated. Marcus might try to show up at the office. If he does, don't let him in, and call the police if he refuses to leave. Copy that, Morrison said. See you soon. Liam hung up and leaned against Arya's car, staring at nothing while his mind raced through possibilities. Marcus had been careful enough to hide his main scheme for months. Whatever backup plan he'd set in motion would be equally well concealed. They might not figure it out until it was too late to stop the damage. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister. Emma is asking about you again. I told her you'd be here by 1 o'clock. Can you make that? Liam checked the time. It was already noon. Even if they went straight to the office and everything went perfectly, he probably wouldn't be able to get to his sister's house by 1. He typed back, Can you keep her until 3? Something came up at work that I can't postpone. I'm really sorry. His sister's response came quickly. This is the 3rd time this month you've been late or canceled. Emma is starting to notice. The words hit harder than they should have. Because his sister was right. Liam had been distracted for weeks now, pulled between his responsibilities to Emma and his growing involvement in Arya's crisis. He'd been telling himself he was balancing everything fine, but the truth was, something had to give eventually. He started to type a response, but Arya reappeared from the elevator before he could finish. She'd changed into dark slacks and a crisp white blouse, her hair pulled back into a severe ponytail. The wedding dress was stuffed unceremoniously into the weekender bag she carried. She looked like herself again, or at least like the version of herself she wore to board meetings. Ready? She asked. Liam pocketed his phone without sending the text. Ready. They took Arya's car with Liam driving because she was scrolling through emails on her phone, her face getting progressively darker with each one she opened. Half the board has already sent messages, she muttered. Whitmore wants an emergency meeting Monday at 8 a.m. Reynolds is asking for clarification about the legal situation. Patterson wants to know if I'm stepping down. Are you? Liam asked, navigating out of the parking garage into midday traffic. Hell no, Arya said. I built that company. They don't get to take it away from me because I trusted the wrong person. Good. Liam merged onto the highway. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That I made a mistake in my personal life, but my professional judgment remains sound. That Marcus's attempt to defraud the company was caught and stopped before any actual damage occurred. That I'm taking aggressive legal action to ensure he faces consequences. She paused. And that if anyone on the board has lost confidence in my leadership, they're welcome to tender their resignation. Liam glanced at her. That's a bold play. I'm done playing it safe, Arya said. Playing it safe got me engaged to a con artist. Playing it safe got me standing in a wedding dress telling 200 people I was an idiot. From now on, I'm playing offense. They reached Bennett Technologies headquarters 15 minutes later. The building was a sleek glass and steel structure in the tech corridor downtown. 20 stories of cutting-edge design that had won awards when it opened 5 years ago. On a Saturday, the parking lot should have been mostly empty, but Liam saw at least a dozen cars scattered across the spaces, including Marcus's distinctive silver BMW. He's here, Arya said flatly, spotting the car at the same moment Liam did. He's not supposed to be here, Liam said. Morrison should have had his badge access revoked the moment you called off the wedding. Unless he had a backup way in, Arya said. She was already out of the car before Liam could put it in park, striding toward the building entrance with her bag still clutched in one hand. Liam caught up with her at the doors. Wait, we should call Morrison first. Let him know Marcus is inside. I own this building, Arya said. I'm not calling security before I walk into my own headquarters. She swiped her badge across the reader, and the door unlocked with a soft click. The lobby was empty and quiet, the weekend skeleton crew apparently off handling other business. Their footsteps echoed as they crossed to the elevator bank. Arya jabbed the button for the executive floor, and they rode up in tense silence. When the doors opened on the 20th floor, Liam heard voices immediately. One was Marcus. The other was a woman Liam didn't recognize at first, until Arya went rigid beside him. That's Amanda Reeves, she said quietly. Marcus's girlfriend, the one from Nexus Systems. They moved down the hallway toward Arya's office, where the voices were coming from. The door was open, and through it Liam could see Marcus standing behind Arya's desk, rifling through papers scattered across the surface. Amanda stood nearby with a laptop open, typing rapidly. What the hell are you doing in my office? Arya said from the doorway. Marcus looked up, and his expression shifted from concentration to something that might have been genuine surprise. Arya, I didn't expect you to come here after you showed up at my wedding and tried to manipulate me into going through with a ceremony designed to give you legal access to my assets. Arya crossed the office in 3 strides. Get away from my desk. I'm just collecting some of my personal items, Marcus said smoothly. Things I left here over the past few months. You can't fault me for that. Your personal items wouldn't be in my files, Arya said. She looked at Amanda. And you definitely have no reason to be here. Get out before I call security. Amanda's fingers didn't stop moving across the keyboard. Just finishing up a few things. Finishing what? Liam moved further into the office, trying to see what was on the laptop screen without being obvious about it. Nothing that concerns you, Marcus said. His earlier smooth tone had developed an edge. This is between me and Arya. Everything that happens in this building concerns me, Arya said. I'm the CEO. You're trespassing. And whatever you're doing right now, whatever files you're looking through, whatever data Amanda is accessing, is going to be used as evidence when I have you prosecuted for corporate espionage. Good luck proving that, Marcus said. I had legitimate access to this office for months. I was engaged to you. We worked on projects together. Any files I looked at, any information I accessed, it was all within the scope of our relationship. Our relationship ended the moment I found out what you were planning, Arya said coldly, and your access to this building was revoked this morning. So whatever you're doing right now is illegal entry and attempted theft of proprietary information. Marcus's smile widened. Actually, my access wasn't revoked. I checked before I came. Still works just fine. Arya pulled out her phone and dialed Morrison. David, Marcus Chen is in my office right now. He claims his badge access is still active. A pause while she listened. How is that possible? Her voice rose. I gave you explicit instructions this morning to revoke all his credentials. Another pause. Then how did he get in? Arya's knuckles were white around the phone. Never mind. Get up here now and bring your team. He's not leaving until we figure out what he's accessed. She hung up and looked at Marcus. Security is on their way. You can either leave now voluntarily, or you can explain to the police why you're accessing files in a building you no longer have permission to enter. I think I'll wait for the police, Marcus said. I'd love to explain to them exactly what I was doing. I'd especially love to explain the files I found detailing all the insider trading you've been doing for the past 2 years. The office went silent. Liam saw Arya's face go pale, saw her mouth open and close without sound, saw Amanda smirk from behind her laptop. That's a lie, Arya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Marcus gestured to the papers scattered across her desk. Because these documents tell a different story. Trading records that show you buying and selling stock in your competitors based on information you shouldn't have had access to. Information that suspiciously appeared in your files right before major market moves. Information that generated millions in profits for your personal accounts. Arya started. You never noticed? Marcus's voice was silk over steel. How convenient. Because I have documentation showing trades executed from your accounts, using information that could only have come from internal sources at those companies. Information that mysteriously appeared in your email inbox from anonymous sources right before each trade. Liam felt his stomach drop as he realized what Marcus had done. You planted the evidence. Did I? Marcus smiled. Or did I just discover evidence that was already there? Evidence that Arya conveniently overlooked during her investigation of my supposed crimes. The trades aren't real, Arya said. Her voice was stronger now. I've never executed any trades like what you're describing. Your trading accounts beg to differ, Amanda said, still typing. I'm looking at them right now. Quite the portfolio you've built up. Those aren't my accounts, Arya said. I don't know what you've hacked or fabricated, but none of this is real. Then you won't mind if I turn all of this over to the SEC on Monday morning, Marcus said pleasantly. I'm sure they'll be very interested to investigate. And while they're investigating, I imagine your board will want to suspend you as CEO. Can't have someone under investigation for securities fraud running a publicly traded company. Bad optics. This was it, Liam realized. This was the damage Marcus had warned about. He hadn't just planned to steal from Arya during their marriage. He'd created a backup plan that would destroy her reputation and remove her from her company even if the wedding never happened. A plan that was elegant and vicious, and exactly the kind of thing that would work if no one could prove the evidence was fabricated. You son of a bitch, Arya breathed. I prefer to think of myself as a strategic planner, Marcus said. You see, I knew there was a chance you'd figure out what I was doing with the wedding. You're smart and you're careful, and I couldn't count on you being blinded by love forever. So I needed insurance. I needed a way to neutralize you even if you backed out. By framing me for insider trading, Arya said. By documenting what you'd been doing for years, Marcus corrected. At least, that's what it will look like to anyone who reviews these files. The evidence is thorough, it's time-stamped, it's backed up in multiple locations. And the best part? Most of it came from your own accounts and systems. I barely had to fabricate anything. I just had to plant a few suggestions and let the pattern tell its own story. Liam saw red. Before he could think about what he was doing, he'd crossed the office and grabbed Marcus by the front of his shirt, slamming him back against the bookshelf behind Arya's desk. You're not going to get away with this. Get your hands off me, Marcus said, but there was fear in his eyes now. Liam? Arya said sharply. Let him go. Liam held on for another second, staring into Marcus's face and seeing nothing there but calculation and contempt. Then he forced himself to release his grip and step back. His hands were shaking. Thank you, Marcus said, straightening his shirt. Assault and battery. That's going in my report, too. There's not going to be a report, Morrison said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Morrison stood there with 3 security officers, all of them looking like they were ready to physically remove Marcus and Amanda if necessary. Mr. Chen, Ms. Reeves, you need to leave this building immediately, Morrison said. You're trespassing. We're collecting evidence, Marcus said. You're stealing proprietary information, Morrison countered. And I have footage from our security cameras showing you entering this office using what appears to be a cloned badge. That's breaking and entering, in addition to the trespassing. The footage won't matter, Marcus said, but he was moving toward the door now, Amanda closing her laptop and following. By Monday morning, everyone will be too busy talking about Arya's insider trading to care about how I got this evidence. We'll see about that, Morrison said. He nodded to his officers, who flanked Marcus and Amanda as they left the office. As soon as they were gone, Arya collapsed into her desk chair. Her face had gone from pale to gray, and her hands were trembling in her lap. "He's going to destroy me," she said quietly. "Even if none of it's real, even if we can prove it's fabricated, the investigation alone will force me out. The board won't let me stay on as CEO while I'm under SEC scrutiny." "Then we don't let it get that far," Liam said. "We prove it's fake before he can report it." "How?" Arya looked up at him, and there was desperation in her eyes. "He said he planted the evidence in my own systems. That means it's going to look legitimate. It's going to have the right timestamps, the right source documentation. How do we prove it's fake when everything points to it being real?" Liam didn't have an answer. His mind was racing, trying to think through the problem, but every angle he examined led back to the same conclusion. Marcus had been planning this for months, and he'd been thorough. Undoing his work in 2 days before he could file his report with the SEC seemed impossible. Morrison appeared in the doorway again. "I've had my team start pulling security footage and access logs. If Marcus planted evidence, there should be traces of when he did it. But it's going to take time to sort through everything." "We don't have time," Arya said. "He's going to file that report Monday morning. That gives us—" She checked her watch. 36 hours to find proof that he fabricated everything." "Then we'd better get started," Liam said. Arya looked at him, and something in her expression broke his heart. She looked exhausted, defeated, like she'd just fought a war and lost before the first battle even began. "You should go home," she said. "You should go get Emma. You've done enough, Liam. You don't need to stay for this part." "Yes, I do," Liam said, "because you're not doing this alone. You're not facing this alone."
And you're not giving up before we've even tried to fight back. "What if we can't win?" Arya's voice was barely above a whisper. "What if Marcus has already won, and we're just going through the motions?" "Then we go through the motions," Liam said, "and we fight anyway, because that's what you do. You fight. You don't lie down and accept defeat. You find another angle, another strategy, another way forward."
And right now, your way forward starts with figuring out exactly what Marcus planted and how he did it. Arya held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly and turned to Morrison. "Pull everything. Every access log, every security feed, every backup file from the past 6 months. I want to know every single time Marcus entered this building, what systems he touched, what files he accessed, and I want a forensic analysis of my trading accounts to prove those transactions were fabricated. I'll need authorization to access your personal accounts," Morrison said. "You have it." Arya was already pulling up files on her computer. "Whatever you need. I've got nothing to hide because I didn't do any of what he's accusing me of." "Yes, ma'am." Morrison disappeared again, presumably to coordinate with his team. Liam pulled up a chair next to Arya's desk.
"Where do we start?" "We start by assuming Marcus is smarter than we want him to be," Arya said. She was typing now, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "We start by assuming he covered his tracks, that he anticipated we'd try to prove the evidence was fake, and that he built in safeguards to protect his narrative." She pulled up a spreadsheet. "These are the dates on the documents he referenced, the supposed insider trades. We need to cross-reference them with everything else in our systems, figure out if there are any anomalies, any signs that the files were created recently rather than on the dates they claim." "What about the trading accounts?" Liam asked. "Can we prove those were accessed by someone other than you?" "Maybe. If Marcus was using my credentials, there should be IP address. Discrepancies or login patterns that don't match my normal behavior." Arya's jaw was set now, some of the old determination returning to her expression. "We need a forensic accountant, someone who specializes in financial fraud, someone who can testify that the accounts were compromised." "I know someone," Liam said. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. "Former colleague from when I worked in consulting before Emma was born. She does forensic accounting now, specializes in corporate fraud cases. If anyone can prove those trades were fabricated, it's her." "Call her," Arya said.
I don't care what it costs. Liam stepped out into the hallway to make the call. His former colleague, Jennifer Park, answered on the third ring, and Liam explained the situation as quickly as he could. To his relief, she didn't hesitate. Send me everything you have, she said. I'll start looking tonight. If the accounts were compromised, I should be able to find evidence of it. You're a lifesaver, Liam said. Seriously. Thank you. Thank me when we've proven the case, Jennifer said. This sounds complicated, Liam. There's no guarantee I'll find what you're looking for. I know, but we have to try. He hung up and went back into Arya's office. She was still typing, her face illuminated by the glow of her computer screen, and Liam felt something tighten in his chest. She'd been through hell today. Cancelled wedding, public confession, confrontation with Marcus, and now this. And she was still fighting, still refusing to give up. Jennifer's going to start tonight, he said. I'm sending her the account information now. Good. Arya didn't look up from her screen. Morrison found something, 3 separate instances over the past month where Marcus accessed restricted files he shouldn't have had clearance for, files containing competitive intelligence on other tech companies. That's good, right? Liam said. That proves he was planning something. It proves he was snooping, Arya corrected. It doesn't prove he planted the insider trading evidence, but it's a start. It shows a pattern of unauthorized access. She finally looked up at him, and there were dark circles under her eyes. This is going to take all night, isn't it? Probably, Liam admitted. Maybe longer. Arya nodded and reached for her phone. Then she paused. You really should go home. Emma's waiting for you. Emma will understand, Liam said, even though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. Right now, this is where I need to be. Arya's expression softened. Thank you, she said quietly, for staying, for not running when things got complicated. She stopped, searching for words, for being here. I'm not going anywhere, Liam said. And as he pulled his chair closer to her desk and started working through files alongside her, he meant it, even if it cost him everything. By midnight, Liam's eyes burned from staring at computer screens, and his back ached from sitting in the same position for hours. Empty coffee cups littered Arya's desk, a graveyard of their attempts to stay alert through the endless parade of files and logs Morrison's team kept sending up. The office felt different at night, the usual hum of activity replaced by an eerie quiet broken only by the occasional ping of incoming emails and the soft click of Arya's keyboard. This doesn't make sense, Arya muttered, leaning closer to her monitor. She'd been saying variations of that phrase for the past 3 hours, each time with growing frustration. Look at this timestamp. Marcus supposedly accessed my trading account from this computer on March 15th at 2 p.m., but I was in Tokyo that entire week for the Nakamura merger negotiations. I didn't even turn this computer on until I got back on the 19th. Liam wheeled his chair over to look at her screen. The access log showed a login from Arya's desktop computer using her credentials at the exact date and time she'd specified. Could someone else have used your computer while you were gone? No one has access to this office when I'm traveling except Morrison's team, and they're all cleared at the highest level. Arya scrolled through more entries. But here's another one, April 3rd, 9 a.m. I was in a board meeting that morning. I remember because Whitmore tried to railroad through a vote on executive compensation, and I had to spend 2 hours fighting him on it. I never left the conference room. So either the logs are wrong, Liam started, or someone cloned my credentials and used them to make it look like I was accessing these accounts when I wasn't. Arya sat back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Marcus had access to this office. He could have installed keylogging software, copied my passwords, set up remote access. He had months to prepare this. Liam's phone buzzed on the desk. Another text from his sister. Emma cried herself to sleep asking for you. I don't know what's going on with work, but this is getting ridiculous. The guilt hit like a physical weight. Liam picked up the phone, staring at the message while his throat tightened. He'd called Emma 3 hours ago to say goodnight, had listened to her small voice asking when he was coming home, had promised he'd take her somewhere special tomorrow to make up for missing today. She'd said okay in that too understanding way that made him feel worse than if she'd thrown a tantrum. You should go, Arya said quietly. She was watching him, her expression unreadable. It's late. Emma needs you. We're close to something, Liam said, setting the phone face down on the desk. These timestamp discrepancies. If we can find enough of them, they establish a pattern of fraudulent access. Jennifer can use that to support her forensic analysis. Liam! Arya's voice was firm now. Go home. I can handle this for the rest of the night. You've already given up your entire Saturday. Don't sacrifice Sunday morning, too. I'm not sacrificing anything, Liam said, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. Because he was sacrificing something. He was sacrificing time with his daughter, sacrificing her trust that he'd always be there when she needed him, sacrificing the promise he'd made to himself 6 years ago that Emma would always come first. Arya stood and crossed to where he sat. She put a hand on his shoulder, and the gesture was gentle enough that it almost broke through the wall Liam had built around his guilt. I know what you're doing, she said softly. You're trying to prove that choosing to help me was the right decision, that it's worth the cost. But you don't have to prove anything. I already know what it's costing you, and I'm telling you it's okay to leave. It's okay to choose Emma right now. And what about you? Liam looked up at her. What happens if I leave and you're sitting here alone at 2 a.m. trying to save your company from a man who spent months planning your destruction? Then I'm sitting here alone, Arya said simply, which is what I've been doing for 10 years every time there's a crisis. I know how to handle this, Liam. I know how to function on no sleep and too much coffee and the weight of everything riding on decisions I make in the next 36 hours. What I don't know how to do is ask someone to sacrifice their relationship with their daughter for my sake. Morrison appeared in the doorway before Liam could respond, holding a tablet and looking grimmer than usual. We have a problem. Another one? Arya turned to face him. What now? I've been reviewing the access logs like you asked, cross-referencing them with security footage to verify who was actually in the building during the times Marcus supposedly used your credentials. Morrison held up the tablet, showing a grainy security image. March 15th, 2:03 p.m. Someone accessed your office using what appears to be your badge, but the person in the footage isn't you. Arya took the tablet and zoomed in on the image. The figure was wearing a hooded sweatshirt that obscured their face, but their build and height were wrong for Arya. Who is it? Can't tell from this angle, but they knew where the cameras were. They kept their head down, stayed in blind spots where possible. Morrison swiped to another image. April 3rd, 9:17 a.m. Different person, same MO. Badge access shows you entering your office, but the footage shows someone else entirely. How many times did this happen? Liam asked. So far, I've found 8 separate instances over the past 2 months where someone used cloned credentials to access this office while you were elsewhere in the building or out of town entirely. Morrison's jaw was tight. Someone's been running a systematic operation to frame you, Ms. Bennett. This wasn't just Marcus acting alone. He had help. Amanda Reeves, Arya said immediately. She was here with him today. She's probably been his accomplice this whole time. Possibly, but there might be others. Morrison pulled up another screen on the tablet. I'm running facial recognition on every visitor who's been to this floor in the past 6 months. See if anyone shows up during multiple suspicious incidents. But it's going to take time. Time we don't have, Arya said. She handed the tablet back to Morrison. Focus on the footage from the days Marcus accessed restricted files. If we can identify his accomplices and prove they were coordinating with him, it strengthens our case that everything was fabricated. On it. Morrison left again, his footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Arya sank back into her chair and closed her eyes. For the first time all day, she looked completely drained. Not just tired, but hollowed out, like everything that had happened had finally caught up with her all at once. I can't believe I let this happen. I can't believe I was so blind that someone could just walk into my office, use my credentials, plant evidence, and I never noticed anything wrong. You weren't blind, Liam said. Marcus was careful. He knew your routines, knew when you'd be distracted or out of town. He probably studied your schedule for months before making his moves. I should have seen it. Arya's voice cracked slightly. I should have questioned why he was so interested in my business, why he asked so many questions about our security systems and access protocols. I thought he was just trying to understand my work because he loved me. But he was gathering intelligence. He was planning this from the start. You can't blame yourself for trusting someone who told you they loved you, Liam said, echoing his earlier words from the bridal suite. It felt like a lifetime ago now, that moment when he'd watched her hand shake while reaching for a zipper on a wedding dress she'd never wear again. That's what people do in relationships. They trust each other. They let their guard down. Marcus weaponized that trust, but the fault is his, not yours. Tell that to the board when they vote to remove me on Monday, Arya said bitterly. Tell that to the investors who are going to pull their funding the moment they hear I'm under SEC investigation. Tell that to... She stopped abruptly, pressing the heels of her hands against her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm taking this out on you, and you don't deserve that. Liam's phone buzzed again. He ignored it, keeping his attention on Arya. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be scared. You just spent your would-be wedding day finding out your fiancé was trying to destroy your entire life. You're allowed to fall apart a little. I can't afford to fall apart, Arya said. Not now, not when everything depends on me keeping it together long enough to fix this mess. Then don't fall apart, Liam said. Just bend a little. Just acknowledge that this is hard. And you're human, and you're doing the best you can with an impossible situation. Arya lowered her hands and looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She still hadn't cried, Liam realized. Not when Marcus had shown up at the wedding, not when she'd faced down 200 guests, not when she'd discovered the extent of Marcus's betrayal. She'd held everything in, maintaining that iron control even as the world collapsed around her. Why are you really here? She asked quietly. And don't tell me it's because you work for me or because you feel responsible. Tell me the real reason you're sitting in my office at midnight on a Saturday instead of home with your daughter. Liam could have deflected, could have given her some variation of the professional answers he'd been offering all day. But they'd already crossed too many lines for him to retreat behind formality now. Because I can't stand the thought of you fighting this alone, he said. Because watching you walk down that aisle in your wedding dress to tell everyone your life was falling apart was the hardest thing I've ever witnessed. And I promised myself I wouldn't let you face what came after without someone standing beside you. He paused. And because somewhere in the past 4 years, I stopped seeing you as just my boss and started seeing you as someone The words caught in his throat, too big and too terrifying to say out loud. Someone you what? Arya pressed, the same way she'd pressed him in the bridal suite and again in the parking garage. Someone I can't imagine my life without, Liam finished quietly. The silence that followed felt different from all the other silences they'd shared today. This one was charged with something Liam couldn't name, something that made his pulse race and his hands clench on the arms of his chair. I don't know how to do this, Arya said finally. I don't know how to let someone in after what Marcus did. I don't know how to trust my own judgment about people anymore. And I especially don't know how to navigate whatever this is between us when everything else in my life is on fire. Then don't navigate it, Liam said. Don't try to figure it out, or plan it, or make it make sense. Just acknowledge that it exists, that we exist, and that whatever happens with Marcus and the company and all the rest of it, we'll deal with it together. What if I can't give you what you need? Arya's voice was barely above a whisper. What if I'm too damaged or too focused on my work or too afraid to ever fully trust anyone again? Then we figure it out as we go, Liam said. I'm not asking for promises or guarantees. I'm just asking for honesty, for you to stop trying to protect me from your mess and let me choose whether I want to be here. And Emma? Arya's eyes held his. What about her? She needs a father who's present, not one who's staying up all night helping his boss fight corporate espionage charges. The mention of Emma sent another spike of guilt through Liam's chest. I know this isn't fair to her, but I also know that if I walked away right now, if I left you to handle this alone, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And that regret would poison everything else, including my relationship with Emma. That's not a good a reason to stay, Arya said. No, Liam agreed, but it's an honest one. His phone buzzed a third time. Liam finally picked it up and saw a text from Jennifer Park. Found something. You need to call me now. He showed the screen to Arya, whose expression shifted immediately from vulnerable to alert. Call her. Liam dialed Jennifer's number and put the phone on speaker. She answered on the first ring, and her voice was tight with the kind of controlled excitement that meant she'd discovered something significant. The trading accounts are fake, she said without preamble. Not fake in the sense that they don't exist. They're real accounts with real transactions.
But they weren't executed by Arya Bennett. They were executed by someone who had access to her credentials and used them to create a paper trail. How can you prove that? Arya leaned toward the phone. Multiple ways. First, the IP addresses used to access the accounts don't match Arya's typical login patterns. She usually accesses financial systems from 3 locations: her office, her home, and occasionally her phone when traveling. These trades were executed from at least 7 different IP addresses, none of which match any of her known devices or locations.
Jennifer's voice took on the rapid-fire cadence of someone explaining technical details she'd been analyzing for hours. Second, the trading patterns themselves are wrong. Whoever executed these trades was trying to make it look like insider trading, but they made mistakes. The timing is too perfect. The trades happen within hours of major announcements, which is actually suspicious in itself because real insider traders usually try to create more distance between their trades and public announcements. These trades scream, "I had inside information," in a way that's almost theatrical. What else? Liam asked. The trading strategy is inconsistent with Arya's known investment philosophy. I pulled her legitimate personal portfolio, the one she's had for years, and it shows a conservative, long-term approach. Mostly index funds, some blue-chip stocks, very little day trading. But these fraudulent accounts show aggressive short-term speculation, high-risk options trading, exactly the kind of behavior that would make sense if someone was trying to profit quickly from inside information. Jennifer paused. It's like someone read a textbook on insider trading and then created fake accounts that did everything the textbook said an insider trader would do without understanding that real financial criminals are usually more subtle. Arya's expression had shifted from exhausted to razor-sharp. Can you testify to all of this? I can and I will, Jennifer said. But there's a catch. Everything I just told you is circumstantial. It supports the theory that the accounts were compromised, but it doesn't definitively prove it. A good defense attorney could argue that maybe Arya just got sloppy, or maybe she used different devices we don't know about, or maybe she developed a sudden gambling problem that changed her investment strategy. What would definitively prove it? Liam asked. We need to trace the actual source of the account access. We need to find the devices that were used to execute these trades and prove they weren't Arya's devices. We need email or communication records showing Marcus or his accomplices discussing the fabrication. Jennifer's voice turned apologetic. I can give you expert analysis that says these accounts smell wrong, but to actually prove fraud in a way that would satisfy the SEC and prevent an investigation, you need hard evidence linking Marcus directly to the creation of these false records. Morrison's team is working on that now, Arya said. They're pulling security footage and access logs that show unauthorized entry to my office during the time frame when some of these trades were executed. That helps, Jennifer said. If you can prove someone was physically accessing your systems during the same moments these trades were happening, that's a strong connection. But you'll need more than that. You'll need forensic evidence from the actual devices used or communications between Marcus and whoever was helping him. We're running out of time, Liam said, checking the clock on the wall. It was nearly 1 a.m. Marcus is planning to file his report with the SEC first thing Monday morning. That gives us less than 32 hours to build an airtight case. Then you'd better work fast, Jennifer said. I'll keep analyzing the accounts, see if I can find any other discrepancies. But the real breakthrough is going to come from your end, from proving who actually created these false records and when. Thank you, Jennifer, Arya said. Seriously, we couldn't do this without you. Thank me when we've buried this guy, Jennifer said. I'll send you my preliminary report within the hour. Use it however you need to. She hung up, and Liam set his phone back on the desk. Arya was already pulling up new files on her computer, her exhaustion apparently forgotten in the wake of Jennifer's findings. If Marcus used specific devices to access these accounts, there should be forensic evidence on those devices, she said, typing rapidly. MAC addresses, device fingerprints, browser histories. Morrison's team can subpoena his computer, his phone, Amanda's devices. That takes time, Liam interrupted. Time for warrants, time for legal process. We don't have that kind of time. Then we find another way. Arya's jaw was set in that stubborn line Liam recognized from board meetings. Marcus made a mistake somewhere. He had to. No one can execute a fraud this complex without leaving some kind of trail.
Unless the trail leads somewhere we're not looking, Liam said slowly. An idea was forming, something that had been nagging at the back of his mind since they'd discovered the fake trading accounts. You said Marcus was interested in your security systems, that he asked a lot of questions about access protocols. Right. I thought he was just trying to understand my work. But what if he wasn't just gathering information? What if he was also testing vulnerabilities? Liam pulled up a new screen. When I was investigating him 3 weeks ago, I found communications with some tech consultants I didn't recognize. At the time, I thought they were related to his business ventures. But what if they were helping him hack your systems? Arya's eyes widened. If we can identify those consultants and prove they were paid to compromise my security, that's direct evidence of conspiracy. And if they kept records of their communications with Marcus, email chains, project specifications, payment receipts, we might be able to prove exactly what they were hired to do and when. Liam was already searching through the files he'd compiled during his investigation of Marcus. I have names, 3 different consultants or small firms that received payments from Marcus over the past 6 months. I couldn't figure out what they were for at the time because the invoices were vague, just listed as consulting services. Pull up everything you have on them, Arya said. Yeah. She was leaning over his shoulder now, close enough that Liam could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that had somehow survived the entire chaotic day. If even one of them kept detailed records, if even one of them is willing to testify about what Marcus hired them to do, we might have our smoking gun, Liam finished. They worked in tandem for the next hour, pulling up every scrap of information Liam had gathered about the consultants. One appeared to be a legitimate IT security firm that probably had no idea they'd been hired to help with fraud. Another was a freelance programmer whose website advertised discrete solutions for complex technical challenges, which was the kind of euphemistic language that suggested they were willing to work in gray areas. The third was barely more than a name attached to a series of payments. No website, no business registration, just a person who received money and presumably delivered some kind of service in return. This one, Arya said, pointing to the freelance programmer. David Nguyen. He received 3 payments from Marcus between February and April, totaling almost $50,000. That's too much money for legitimate consulting work. And the timing matches, Liam noted. First payment in February, which is when some of the earliest timestamp discrepancies start appearing in your access logs. Second payment in March, right around when the fake trading accounts were created. Third payment in April, which might have been a final payment after everything was set up. We need to find him, Arya said. Tonight, before Marcus realizes we're onto this angle. It's 1 a.m, Liam pointed out. Even if we can track down his address, we can't just show up at someone's door in the middle of the night. Watch me, Arya said. She was already pulling up public records databases, searching for any information on David Nguyen that might lead to a current address. If this guy helped Marcus frame me for insider trading, I don't care what time it is. I'm going to have a conversation with him. Morrison appeared in the doorway again, this time looking slightly less grim. Got something. The person who accessed your office on March 15th and April 3rd? Same individual both times. Facial recognition got a partial match from another security incident 6 months ago. Someone tried to badge into the building using what turned out to be a fake credential. We flagged them, but never identified who they were because they ran before security could detain them. So this person has been casing the building for at least 6 months, Arya said. Long enough to learn our security patterns, figure out blind spots in camera coverage, practice using cloned badges. And Marcus has been planning this for at least that long, Liam added. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment scheme. This was methodical, calculated, professional. Which means we're not just dealing with Marcus and Amanda, Morrison said. We're dealing with at least one other person, possibly more, who've been running a coordinated operation against you for months. Arya's face had gone pale again. How did I not see this? How did I not notice that someone was systematically infiltrating my company? Because they were good, Morrison said bluntly. Because they knew what they were doing and they had inside help from someone you trusted. This isn't on you, Ms. Bennett. This is on Marcus and whoever he hired to help him. That's what everyone keeps saying, Arya said. Her voice was tight. That it's not my fault, that Marcus was just too good at lying, that I couldn't have known. But I'm the CEO. My job is to know. My job is to protect this company from exactly this kind of threat. And I failed. You didn't fail, Liam said. You were betrayed. There's a difference. Not to the board, there isn't. Arya pushed back from her desk and started pacing. Not to the investors or the clients or the media. To them, I'm the CEO who got engaged to a con artist and nearly let him steal everything. I'm the CEO who's now facing insider trading allegations because I didn't secure my own systems well enough. I'm the CEO who... Her voice broke, and she stopped mid-sentence, pressing a hand to her mouth. Liam stood and crossed to her. Without thinking about whether it was appropriate, he pulled her into a hug. For a second, she stood rigid, every muscle tensed against the contact. Then something gave way and she collapsed against him, her face pressed into his shoulder, her hands gripping the back of his shirt like she was afraid of falling. She still didn't cry, but her breath came in short, sharp gasps that suggested she was fighting hard not to, and Liam held her through it, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, while Morrison quietly excused himself and disappeared down the hallway. "I'm so tired," Arya whispered against his shoulder. "I'm so tired of being strong, of having all the answers, of never being allowed to make mistakes or be human or just break down when everything's falling apart." "Then break down," Liam said quietly. "Right here, right now. I've got you." "I can't." Arya's voice was muffled. "If I start, I won't be able to stop, and I need to keep going. I need to fix this before Monday." "You will," Liam said. "We will. But you're allowed to take 5 minutes to be scared and overwhelmed before you get back to fighting." Arya pulled back slightly, just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears that still refused to fall, and there was something raw in her expression that made Liam's chest ache. What if we can't fix it? What if we find David and Wen and he refuses to talk? What if Marcus covered his tracks too well and we can't prove anything? What if I lose everything I've built because I trusted the wrong person? "Then you rebuild," Liam said. "You start over. You use everything you learned from this to build something even better. And you do it with people who actually deserve your trust. People like you." The question was quiet, vulnerable, completely unlike the confident CEO who'd faced down 200 guests earlier today. "People like me," Liam confirmed. "If you'll have me." Arya held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm going to kiss you again. And this time, it's not because I'm desperate or angry or trying to prove something to myself. This time, it's because I want to. Because you've stayed when you could have left. Because you're here at 1 a.m. helping me fight battles that aren't yours to fight. Because..." She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she kissed him, and this time it was different from the desperate collision in the parking garage. This time it was slower, deeper, weighted with everything they'd been through in the past 18 hours, and everything they hadn't yet said out loud. Liam's hands came up to frame her face, and Arya's fingers tangled in his hair, and for just a moment the crisis and the deadline and the looming threat of Monday morning all faded into background noise. When they finally broke apart, Arya's expression had shifted into something Liam couldn't quite read. "We should find David Nguyen," she said. Her voice was steadier now, some of the iron control returning. "Before I lose my nerve and decide I'd rather hide in this office until Marcus's report destroys me." "You're not going to hide," Liam said, "and you're definitely not going to let Marcus destroy you." Arya managed a faint smile. "When did you get so confident about all this?" "About 3 seconds ago when you kissed me," Liam admitted. "Turns out having something worth fighting for makes the impossible seem slightly less impossible." "Smooth talker," Arya said, but there was warmth in her voice now. She turned back to her computer, pulling up the search results on David Nguyen. "Okay, found an address. He lives about 40 minutes from here, in one of those new condo developments downtown. Think he'll appreciate a visit at 2 a.m? "Probably not," Liam said. "But we're going anyway." "We're going anyway," Arya agreed. She grabbed her bag and car keys. "Let's go ruin someone else's Saturday night for a change." They took Arya's car again, with Liam driving while Arya worked her phone, coordinating with Morrison and updating Jennifer on their progress. The city streets were nearly empty at this hour, just occasional taxis and late-night delivery trucks. Liam found himself thinking about Emma, asleep at his sister's house, completely unaware that her father was currently driving across town to confront a potential co-conspirator in a corporate fraud case. He was going to have a serious conversation with Emma tomorrow,
Was going to have to explain why work had been so demanding lately, why he'd been distracted and absent, why he'd missed their plans today. Was going to have to figure out how to balance his responsibilities to his daughter with whatever was developing between him and Arya. The thought was overwhelming enough that he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the immediate problem of finding David Nguyen and convincing him to give up information that could save Arya's company. The condo building was one of those sleek modern towers that had sprouted up all over downtown in the past few years, all glass and steel and expensive amenities. Liam pulled into the parking garage and they made their way to the lobby, where a bored-looking security guard sat behind a desk. "We're here to see David Nguyen," Arya said, putting on her best CEO voice. "Unit 2847. The guard looked skeptical. "It's 2 in the morning. "I'm aware," Arya said coolly. "This is an emergency. Please ring his unit and tell him Arya Bennett needs to speak with him." Something in her tone must have convinced the guard that arguing would be more trouble than it was worth. He picked up the phone and dialed, waiting through several rings before someone apparently answered. "Mr. Nguyen? Sorry to wake you, sir. There's an Arya Bennett here to see you. Says it's an emergency." A pause while he listened. "Yes, sir. I'll send them up." He hung up and gestured toward the elevators. 28th floor. He says to give him 5 minutes to get dressed." They rode the elevator in silence, Liam watching the floor numbers climb while Arya checked something on her phone. When the doors opened on the 28th floor, they found themselves in a hallway that looked like every other luxury condo hallway Liam had ever seen. Expensive carpet, subdued lighting, identical doors with brass numbers. Unit 2847 was at the end of the corridor. Before they could knock, the door opened to reveal a man in his early 30s wearing rumpled sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair sticking up in multiple directions. He looked exhausted and wary, his eyes darting between Arya and Liam. "Ms. Bennett," he said. His voice was tight. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I'm sure you weren't," Arya said. "Can we come in? We need to talk about the work you did for Marcus Chen." David Nguyen's face went pale. For a second, Liam thought he might slam the door in their faces. Then he stepped back and gestured them inside. The condo was sparsely furnished, more functional than comfortable. A laptop sat open on the coffee table, its screen showing what looked like lines of code. Fast food containers were stacked in one corner, and the whole place had the slightly stale smell of someone who worked too much and cleaned too little. "I didn't know," David said immediately before either of them could speak. "I swear I didn't know what he was planning to use it for." "Use what for?" Arya asked, her voice dangerously quiet. David ran a hand through his already messy hair. "The access software, the credential cloning tools, the remote login protocols. He told me it was for a security audit, that he needed to test your company's systems for vulnerabilities. He said you'd asked him to arrange it but wanted it kept quiet so your IT department wouldn't know they were being tested." "And you believed him," Liam said. "Why wouldn't I?" David's voice rose defensively. "He paid well. He had detailed knowledge of Bennett Technologies' systems. He seemed legitimate. I thought I was doing authorized pen testing work, not helping him commit fraud." "When did you figure out you were wrong?" Arya asked. David's shoulders slumped. "About a week ago. I saw the news about your engagement, saw photos of you and Chen together, and something clicked. I started going back through the work I'd done for him, really looking at it instead of just taking his word for what it was for. And I realized..." He stopped, looking miserable. "I realized the tools I'd built weren't for testing security. They were for bypassing it, for accessing systems without leaving normal traces, for making it look like someone else was doing the accessing." "And you didn't come forward," Arya said. Her voice was cold enough to freeze water. "I was scared," David said. "I'd helped commit corporate espionage, maybe fraud. I could lose my business, face criminal charges. I thought if I just stayed quiet, maybe it would all blow over and no one would ever trace the work back to me." "Well, we traced it," Liam said, "and now you have a choice. You can keep staying quiet and hope we don't turn you over to the authorities. Or you can help us prove what Marcus did. And maybe, just maybe, we'll consider not pressing charges." David looked between them, his expression agonized. "What do you want me to do?" "We want everything," Arya said. "Every email Marcus sent you, every specification for the tools he asked you to build, every payment record, every communication, Every single piece of evidence that proves he hired you to help him frame me for insider trading and corporate espionage. I don't have proof he was framing you, David said. I just have proof I built the tools. I don't know what he did with them after I delivered them. But you can testify about what those tools were designed to do, Liam said. You can explain to a forensic investigator exactly how they work, what they're capable of, why someone would use them. You can provide expert testimony that the fake trading accounts and access logs could only have been created using specialized software designed to circumvent security measures. And in exchange? David asked warily. In exchange, we don't destroy your life, Arya said bluntly. We don't report you to the authorities. We don't sue you for damages. We don't make sure every potential client knows you helped commit corporate fraud. We let you walk away from this with your reputation intact, assuming you give us everything we need to bury Marcus. David was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Then he crossed to his laptop and started typing. Give me an hour. I'll compile everything I have. Emails, project files, payment records, technical specifications. Everything you need to prove Marcus hired me to build tools for accessing your systems without authorization. We'll wait, Arya said, settling onto the couch. Liam sat beside her while David worked, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The minutes crawled by, marked by the soft click of keys and the occasional muttered curse from David when he had trouble finding a particular file. Arya's leg pressed against Liam's, a point of contact that felt significant after everything they'd been through tonight. He wanted to reach for her hand, wanted some gesture that acknowledged what had shifted between them in her office, but this didn't feel like the right moment. His phone buzzed. Another text from his sister, time-stamped 20 minutes ago. We need to talk about boundaries. I love Emma, but I'm not a free babysitting service. You need to figure out what's going on with your job. Liam closed his eyes, the guilt washing over him again. His sister was right. He'd been relying on her too much lately, using her as his safety net whenever work demanded more than his carefully balanced schedule could handle. And Emma was paying the price, spending weekend after weekend shuffled between relatives while her father chased after crises that weren't technically his responsibility. Except they felt like his responsibility now. Because Arya wasn't just his boss anymore, and helping her fight Marcus wasn't just about protecting his job. It was about protecting someone he'd started to care for in ways that terrified him. Someone who'd somehow slipped past all his defenses and made him want things he'd convinced himself he couldn't have. Got it, David said suddenly. He unplugged a flash drive from his laptop and held it up. Everything I have on the Marcus Chen project, emails, specifications, payment records, even some screenshots of the tools I built showing their capabilities. It's all here. Arya took the flash drive like it was made of gold. If any of this is fabricated or misleading, it's not, David interrupted. I'm a lot of things, Ms. Bennett, but I'm not stupid enough to lie to you when you're offering me a way out of this mess. Everything on that drive is legitimate. Good. Arya stood and Liam rose with her. I'm going to have my lawyers review this. If it checks out, we'll keep our word about not pressing charges. But if I find out you're still in contact with Marcus, if I find out you've warned him we have this evidence, I won't, David said quickly. I'm done with this. I just want to put it behind me and move on. They left him standing in his messy condo and rode the elevator back down in silence. It wasn't until they were in the car, pulling out of the parking garage, that Arya finally spoke. We might actually have enough, she said quietly. Jennifer's forensic analysis, Morrison's security footage, and now David's testimony about the tools Marcus used. If we can tie it all together in a coherent narrative, we can prove Marcus orchestrated the whole thing, Liam finished. We can show the SEC that the insider trading allegations are fabricated, that you were the victim, not the perpetrator. We can survive this, Arya said, and there was wonder in her voice, like she genuinely believed survival was impossible until this moment. Liam reached over and took her hand. She laced her fingers through his without hesitation, and they drove back toward Bennett Technologies' headquarters through the empty pre-dawn streets, holding on to each other, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd found a way to win. Really? Emma's whole face lit up. Really? Liam confirmed, hoping desperately that he'd be able to keep that promise. Now let's get you home and into bed. It's way past your bedtime. He carried her to the car, listening to her chatter about all the fish she wanted to see tomorrow, and tried not to think about how many promises he'd made this weekend that he still wasn't sure he could keep. The first gray light of Sunday morning was bleeding through the windows of Arya's office when Morrison knocked on the doorframe. He looked like he hadn't slept either, his usually crisp uniform rumpled, but his expression carried something Liam hadn't seen in hours: cautious optimism. "The lawyers finished reviewing everything," Morrison said, holding up a thick folder. "David and Gwen's files, Jennifer's forensic analysis, our security footage. They're calling it airtight." Arya looked up from her computer, and Liam could see the exhaustion carved into every line of her face. They'd been back at headquarters for 3 hours, coordinating with her legal team, assembling evidence into a comprehensive narrative that proved Marcus's fraud. "Airtight enough to stop the SEC investigation before it starts?" Arya asked. "According to Anderson, we have enough to file a criminal complaint against Marcus Chen for fraud, corporate espionage, and identity theft. We have enough to prove the insider trading allegations are fabricated." Morrison set the folder on her desk. "He's drafting a formal statement to submit to the SEC first thing tomorrow morning. He thinks they'll decline to pursue an investigation once they see what we have." Liam watched Arya's shoulders sag with relief so profound it looked like it hurt. She'd been holding herself together through sheer force of will for nearly 24 hours, and now that the immediate crisis had passed, the cost of that control was showing. "What about Marcus?" she asked quietly. "Anderson's team sent him a letter an hour ago. If he submits any allegations to the SEC, we'll immediately file criminal charges." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Marcus's lawyer called 20 minutes ago asking to discuss a settlement. Anderson told him where he could shove it." "Good," Arya said, then more quietly. "It's really over?" "The immediate threat is over," Morrison said. "But there's still going to be fallout. The board is going to have questions. Investors are going to want reassurances." "Let them," Arya said. There was steel in her voice now. "I'll answer the board's questions. I'll reassure the investors. The truth will be out there instead of Marcus's version." Morrison nodded and left them alone again. The office fell silent except for the hum of Arya's computer and the distant sounds of the city waking up outside. "You should go," Arya said. "You've been here all night. Emma needs you." Liam turned to face her. "Are you sure you're okay?" "No," Arya said honestly, "but I'm not in immediate danger of losing everything I've built anymore. And that's because of you." She stood and walked over to him. "You stayed when you could have left. I don't know how to thank you for that." "You don't have to thank me," Liam said. "I made a choice. I chose to be here." "And what did that choice cost you?" Arya's eyes searched his face. "How angry is your sister? How hurt is Emma?" Liam's throat tightened. "I don't know yet, but I'll deal with it." "Will you?" Arya's voice was soft. "Or will you resent me 6 months from now when you realize what you sacrificed?" "That's not going to happen," Liam said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. "You don't know that," Arya said. "We don't know how to balance what's happening between us with your responsibilities to Emma. We don't know if I can be the kind of person who deserves what you're offering." She stopped, her voice catching. "We don't know anything except that something shifted between us that can't be unshifted." "Is that what you want?" Liam asked. "To go back to being boss and assistant and nothing more?" Arya laughed, and it was the saddest sound Liam had ever heard. "I don't know if I could go back even if I wanted to." Liam reached for her hands. "Then we figure it out one step at a time, starting with me going home to Emma, and you getting some actual sleep, and then tomorrow we deal with the board and whatever comes next." "And after that?" Arya asked. "After that, we have that conversation you mentioned, the real one." Liam squeezed her hands gently. "But not now. Not when we're both running on no sleep and too much adrenaline." Arya nodded slowly. "Okay. Go home. Take care of Emma." Liam hesitated, then leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "Call me if you need anything." "I will," Arya said. Then, as he turned to leave, "Liam?" He looked back. "Whatever happens next, thank you. For choosing to stay. For choosing me, even when it was complicated and messy." "It wasn't a terrible idea," Liam said quietly. "It was the best decision I've made in 4 years." Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that felt almost cruel after everything that had happened. Liam stood outside the Bennett Technologies conference room at 7:45, straightening his tie and trying to ignore the way his stomach was twisting itself into knots. Through the glass walls, he could see board members already gathering, their expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility. Arya emerged from her office wearing a charcoal suit that looked like armor, her hair pulled back severely, every inch of her radiating controlled power. She stopped when she saw Liam waiting. "You came," she said quietly. "I told you I would." Liam fell into step beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to walk into a firing squad," Arya admitted. "But at least I'm walking in with the truth." The board meeting was brutal. Whitmore called for her removal as CEO, citing failed judgment. Other board members demanded explanations. But Arya presented everything: Jennifer's forensic analysis, Morrison's security footage, David Nguyen's testimony, the SEC's decision to investigate Marcus instead of her. When Whitmore pushed harder, Liam stood up. He wasn't supposed to speak during board meetings, but he couldn't stay silent. "I've worked for Ms. Bennett for 4 years," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "This weekend, I watched her face the worst betrayal of her life and turn it into an opportunity to protect everyone who depends on this company. She didn't panic. She fought back. That's not a failure of judgment. That's leadership." The vote came down 7-2 in Arya's favor. Whitmore stormed out, defeated. When the room finally emptied, Arya slumped in her chair. "That was terrifying." "You were incredible," Liam said. "You were the one who stood up for me." Arya looked at him with something soft in her expression. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Liam said simply, "because everything I said was true." Arya stood and led him outside to a bench overlooking the small park adjacent to the building. The morning air was cool, the city fully awake around them. "I spent all day yesterday thinking," Arya said, "about what you said. About figuring things out one step at a time." She turned to face him fully. "I want to try. I want to see what this could be if we stop trying to protect ourselves from it. I want to date you, actually date you. I want to meet Emma properly. I want to figure out how to balance everything." Liam felt something tight in his chest loosen. "That sounds terrifying." "It is terrifying," Arya agreed, "because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone in after Marcus, but I'm willing to try if you are." "I'm willing," Liam said, reaching for her hand. "We start with dinner, a real date, just you and me. And if things go well, you meet Emma. No pressure." "Deal," Arya said, and kissed him right there on the bench where anyone could see them. 3 months later, Liam watched Emma show Arya her collection of rocks from the park, explaining in elaborate detail why each one was special. Arya listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Emma light up with excitement. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, scheduling conflicts, times when work demands clashed with family plans. But they were figuring it out. "She likes you," Liam said later, after Emma had gone to bed. "I like her too," Arya said, settling into his arms on the couch. "She's brilliant and stubborn and asks impossible questions. I wonder where she gets that from." Liam laughed. "Probably her father." "Definitely her father," Arya agreed. They'd learned something through all of it, that trust wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about choosing honesty, even when it cost you something. That love wasn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It was about showing up and doing the work even when it was hard. That family wasn't just the one you were born into, it was the one you built with people who chose to stay. Marcus was facing federal charges. The company was stronger than ever. And Liam had finally stopped trying to choose between different parts of his life and started building one that held everything he valued. "Thank you," Arya said quietly, "for staying, for choosing this even when it was complicated." "Thank you for letting me," Liam said, and kissed the top of her head. Outside, the city hummed with its endless rhythm. Inside, they sat together in the quiet, building something real from the ruins of what had almost destroyed them both. It wasn't the ending either of them had planned, but it was theirs, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for.